Hello fellow astrologers, welcome back to the Astrology Keyring Fundamental Series. In this video, we're going to be talking about Mercury, the messenger. This is D4. We're going to go over about how Mercury affects you in your chart as the communicator. We'll go over our interactive links, and then we'll talk about the chart details for Mercury and how they connect to a number of things. Then we'll go over to the Keyring and show their connection on things. And once we're done with that, we'll come back and read these keywords. So let's take a look at the paragraph. Mercury is the planet of communication, thought, and perception. It governs how we speak, write, learn, and process information. Fast-moving and curious, Mercury influences show up in how we express ourselves verbally and mentally, including our logic, memory, and decision-making styles. It also rules travel, technology, commerce, and the nervous system. In mythology, Mercury was the messenger of the gods, carrying information between realms, fitting for its role in connecting ideas and people. Mercury's position in a chart reveals your intellectual rhythm and communicative tone. When balanced, it promotes clarity and adaptability. When misaligned, it may lead to restlessness, overthinking, or miscommunications. So yes, Mercury the messenger is about communications and being intellectual. It's not just about what your core self, like the luminaries talked about, which talks more about the core pieces of your id, ego, and superego. This shows some of the methods by which you connect and interact with other people when it comes to communicating, like how you talk to people. How it's aspected to the other planets can tell a lot about the connections you make with communications, as well as how they're aspected to other people when we get into the angles and things of that nature in the F section. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So like all of our pages, we have a series of interactive links. As you see here, we have more than usual because we're talking about more than just one set of houses and signs a planet connects to with Mercury. And if you want to go to one of these other topics, you can click on the topic there to see what Google has to say about it, or you can click on the letter and the number and watch the video pertaining to it. So, now let's talk about those chart details for Mercury. The planet is one of the inner planets. It's one of the fast-moving planets. We're going to talk about Venus and Mars next, but they're also some of the fast inner planets, and all of those planets usually take less than 2 years to make their journey around the sun. In Mercury's case, it actually travels around the sun 3 times in a year, and it's also famous for its Mercury retrograde. When Mercury goes retrograde, it has a tendency to set things back for communications, contracts, cause problems with some short distance travel and things like that. So, and that's when the planet, instead of moving forward, appears to be going backwards because of the position it is in relative to the sun. But one thing, Mercury is always going to be 30 degrees from the sun at any given time. When it goes too far in one direction, it'll start retrograding and go all the way back 60 degrees towards all the way the other side of the sun. So it can start here, retrograde all the way back 60 degrees to the other side of the sun by the time it's fully retrograde and goes direct again. But it will never be more than 30 degrees away from the sun. So Mercury symbolizes communication, thought, information, and exchange. The ruling signs are Gemini and Virgo. Now, we talked about that in some of the other videos about how Gemini and Virgo are the rulers. It shares 2 planets because since there hasn't been another planet that's discovered in the galaxy to take over one of these 2, it's still sharing the traditional rulers of both Gemini and Virgo, as you can see them right here. It steps off the first step off of the houses. We'll talk about that in a second, where we talk about the 3rd and the 6th house. Right here, you can see that between the 3rd and the 6th house, it separates. Now we have these 2 lines here where you can see how they connect with these signs. But again, like we said, until they're like one of these other planets that used to have a ruler but have a new one, that used to share a ruler but now have a new one. These two signs, Virgo and Gemini, share Mercury. And they do have a lot of similarities with the communication and the details. They both have some of those things in common. The third house is right here for Gemini. The sixth house is Virgo. You have health and communication. I also want to mention these planetary dignities. For the case of Mercury, it shares both Virgo and Gemini as its ruler, but you can see Virgo is also the exalted sign. I imagine that once there's a new planet, Virgo's going to become whatever that new planet is, so that it can just stay the exalted and Gemini can just stay the ruler. But the exalted and the ruler are usually positive signs, and the detriment, which is directly opposed the Gemini, which is Sagittarius, and fall, which is directly opposed Virgo, are the two more negative positions for the planet to be in. Doesn't mean they're all bad. It just means you got to work harder. A lot of people who have these planets that rule those things just fall into stuff. That's why people always talk about Leos, always everything's so perfect for them. Because it's so easy. Leos rule that, the planet of the sun. It has to become a challenge for them to realize that they're taking for granted having an excellent situation. Same thing happens for Virgos and Geminis with Mercury. They're excellent communicators. When you have people who have these Virgo or Gemini and Mercury, it helps a lot with connecting to that sign. Where Sagittarius and Pisces are not necessarily good positions, where you'll have a little more struggle. Sagittarius is more long distance travel and spiritual and higher metaphysical learning, not more hard detailed facts. And Pisces also is about dreaming and institutions. These signs are a little more challenging in this planet. Let's come back here and talk about these keywords right here. Now, as per always, we would like giving a well balance of keywords. We give the general, the positive, and the negative traits that you can find about Mercury and every other sign, planet, house, or whatever we talk about. In this case, you may also notice that some of these things show up in other signs, planets, houses, because they share some similarities or some houses with some of the other things, so they may share some keywords. So let's talk about that. General traits: communication, intellect, language, thought, speed, perception. Positive traits: articulate, witty, inquisitive, logical, curious, versatile, and perceptive. Negative traits: anxious, overthinking, scattered, critical, argumentative, and superficial. So these are some great keywords here for Mercury. Does a good job of touching on everything. And I think right there we've pretty much summed up touching on how Mercury itself works in astrology. Later on, when we actually start doing charts, we'll put together the planet and the actual sign so you can see how it flavors each individual one. We do a chart. We get more involved in the intermediate chart. We'll talk about houses, but that all gets more involved when we get into the next series, the E series. That pretty much wraps it up for Mercury D4, the messenger. In the next series, we'll be talking about Venus in D5. We hope you have enjoyed this video from our Astrology Keyring series. If you like the content, please like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you for watching, and have a blessed journey.